After all I've done for him. Now he goes two-timing.
He's been two-timing Lucy, so there's another kind of arithmetic for what he's doing to you.
Lucy!
Hello to all the classic people that are returning. I'm glad you're back. I want to welcome any new visitors. And there will be spoilers ahead. Today on Classic Movie Review, we are taking on the film noir, All the King's Men, 1949. I want to shout out to the Nebraska Welder. Thanks for the review. It is greatly appreciated. Keep sending those reviews, comments, and emails. They really help the show grow. On IMDb.com, this film has a 7.5 rating. On RottenTomatoes.com, the film has a 97% on the tomato meter and 78% audience approval. So not too shabby. Bosley Crothers actually liked this film, saying in a November 13, 1949 review, quote, "The other is a roaring social drama from Columbia called All the King's Men. The scene of this rip-roaring picture is a backwards American state, and the principal character in it is a Huey Long type of demagogue. Furthermore, its absorbing interest is the weakness of people towards power, and it pretty well shatters all illusions about the decency of man before it's through. But it's a two-fisted, hard-hitting picture, full of shatteringly realistic scenes of vicious, corrupt, and wild maneuvering in the area of cheap politics. Although its illuminations of the motives of its characters are dim, it gives a tremendous visualization of the sprawling growth of a fascist incubus right here in our own country." Unquote. This movie won 3 Oscars. Best Motion Picture, Best Actor Broderick Crawford, and Best Supporting Actress Mercedes McCambridge. It was nominated for 4 more but did not win. Best Director for Robert Rossen, Best Supporting Actor John Ireland, Best Writing Screenplay Robert Rossen, and Best Film Editing Robert Parrish and Al Clark. Mercedes McCambridge as Sadie is one of the best reasons to watch this movie as she walks through the background. Another great actor in this movie is Walter Burke as Sugar Boy. He doesn't say much, but he's always in the background, standing sentinel over Willie. On my ever-changing list of all film noir movies, today's film consistently rests at 15 out of 917 entries, so I clearly like it. This was one of the few films that I loved long before I heard the term film noir. Actors.
Right, and I'm a Shakespearean actor.
John Ireland played reporter Jack Burden, and Joanne Drew was in the role of Anne Stanton. These married actors were covered in the western Red River, 1948. Broderick Crawford played the role of Governor Willie Stark. Crawford was first covered in Human Desire, 1954. Mercedes McCambridge played assistant to Willie Stark, Sadie Burke. McCambridge was born in 1916 in Illinois. She later became a member of the Mercury Theater Group. McCambridge began working on radio in the 1930s. She has a very raspy voice that sounds like she's on a 2-pack-a-day bender. All the King's Men, 1949 was her first film for which she won a Best Supporting Actress Oscar for The Triple-Crossed Lover. In addition to being successful on television, McCambridge had a career as a character actor. Some of her more memorable roles include Johnny Guitar, 1954, Giant, 1956, A Farewell to Arms, 1957, a small but important role in Touch of Evil, 1958, where she was terrifying, Western Cimarron, 1960, and the voice of the demon in The Exorcist, 1973. "I am a demon, jump out the window." McCambridge died of natural causes in 2004. Ann Seymour played the long-suffering wife of Willie as Miss Lucy Stark. Seymour was born in 1901 in New York City.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
Her mother was an actress and her family had been involved with theater for 7 generations. Seymour trained at the American Laboratory Theater School under Maria Openskaya. She began working with a theater group in New England. Seymour made her Broadway debut in 1928. Seymour began working on the radio and successfully participated in several long-running series. Her first film role was in All the King's Men, 1949. Other films include The Subterraneans, 1960, Stay Away Joe, 1968, and Field of Dreams, 1989. I'm not crying. Yet. Seymour was successful on television and was in Follow Your Heart, 1953. She died in 1988. Walter Burke played driver and bodyguard to the governor, Sugar Boy. His character was handled amazingly in the book. Burke was born in 1908 in New York City.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
A child of Irish immigrants, Burke had an interesting look. He was 5 feet 4 inches tall and had a chiseled face. These assets allowed Burke to play roles from tough guys to jockeys to leprechauns. Burke made his Broadway debut as a teenager in 1925. He worked extensively in theater until he began making movies in 1948. He continued to work in theater throughout his career. Burke's first film role was uncredited in the film noir The Naked City, 1948. He really made a mark in film noir with his best-known film role in All the King's Men, 1949. This film was followed by Dark City, 1950, Double Deal, 1950, Mystery Street, 1950, The Killer That Stalked New York, 1950, M, 1951, and The Crimson Kimono, 1959. A partial list of Burke's other movies include The Guy Who Came Back, 1951, Beauty and the Beast, 1962, How the West Was Won, 1962, Jack the Giant Killer, 1962, My Fair Lady, 1964, The Plainsman, 1966, Double Trouble, 1967, Support Your Local Sheriff, 1969, Support Your Local Gunfighter, 1971, and The Stone Killer, 1973. To put it mildly, he was a very in-demand television actor. Burke appeared in 103 episodes of various television series, including the biggest shows such as Perry Mason 1957 to 1966 and Bonanza 1959 to 1973. Burke traveled between Hollywood and his horse farm in Pennsylvania. While he was in the East, Burke taught acting also. He died in 1984. John Derrick played the rebellious son of the governor, Tom Stark. Derrick was born in Hollywood in 1926. His father was a director and his mother was an actress. Derrick was in Since You Went Away 1944 and another film before being drafted into the Army. He served in the Philippines at the end of the war. A handsome young man, he returned to acting following the war. His best-known films include film noirs Knock on Any Door 1949 and Scandal Sheet 1952. Other important roles are All the King's Men 1949, The Ten Commandments 1956, and Exodus 1960. Derrick directed 11 films and is better known for who he married rather than what he directed. Much of his directorial work was designed to promote whoever was his current wife. After leaving his first wife, he married up-and-coming actress Ursula Andress. He divorced her and married Linda Evans, who starred in television's The Big Valley 1965 to 1969 with Barbara Stanwyck. Derrick directed 3 terrible movies trying to promote his fourth wife, Bo Derek. These are Tarzan the Ape Man 1981, Bolero 1984, and Ghost Can't Do It 1989. John Derrick died in 1998. Story.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
The credits roll over scenes of rural folks flooding into town to support the governor. This is something that happened later in the movie. The story begins with newspaperman Jack Burden, John Ireland, reading a news story about the woman of his dreams, Ann Stanton, Joanne Drew. Jack's editor calls him into the office and assigns him to a story upstate in Canoma County concerning Willie Stark, Broderick Crawford. Stark is running for local office, but the story is that they say he is an honest man. Jack makes it to the small town where he finds Willie making a no-nonsense speech to the locals. Some men come out of the pool hall and send some deputies towards the speech. Willie mentions that there was some chicanery with the bids for the new schoolhouse. The deputy orders the crowd to disperse, and Willie asks his stepson Tom to pass out flyers. The deputies stop that also, and in the scuffle, Willie is arrested. Jack's camera is seized as well. Having witnessed the breakup of the rally, Jack goes to the pool hall to speak with Tiny Duffy, Ralph Dumke, the man that sent the deputies over, about getting his camera back. Most of the men in the pool hall are county commissioners.
You sure come a long way to stick your nose into other people's business.
That's true, only my boss on the paper can't see it that way.
It ain't any of his business either.
Whose business is it?
Them as has turned into it. County commissioners, the voters of Canoma County elected to turn to the business and not take no button in from nobody.
Willie is brought in and allowed to go free. Jack and Willie meet for the first time. The local boys goad Willie about his wife not letting him drink. Tiny makes fun of Sugar Boy, Walter Burke, because he stutters, but Willie speaks up for Sugar Boy. Jack and Willie drive to his home. At the house, Jack meets Willie's father and his much older wife, Lucy, Ann Seymour. They are waiting on Tom to return from handing out flyers. Tom was an orphan that Lucy and Willie took in. Lucy was a school teacher that helped Willie with his education. She was fired from her county job 2 weeks prior. Lucy has the vision, but Willie is more interested in eating chicken. Tom comes in and he's been beaten. Shortly after, a rock comes flying through the window. Willie is enraged, but they don't see through the stone. Back in the capital city, Jack writes about Willie and his honesty. Jack takes a vacation and goes to his home of Burden's Landing. A ferry is required to reach the location. At the wealthy enclave, Jack has a mother, Catherine Warren, who drinks too much, and a stepfather, Granson Rhodes, that despises him. Jack goes to see the neighbors and his old friends. They are Judge Monty Stanton, Raymond Greenleaf, newly minted Dr. Adam Stanton, Shepard Strudwick, and Jack's one genuine desire, Ann Stanton. Jack has a great vacation being around his friends. At a dinner with his parents and the Stantons, Jack's stepfather attacks his articles about Willie Stark. The stepfather says any man can be bought. The judge is optimistic about the future. The stepfather tells Jack that he's already been bought with his money. Jack throws a drink in the man's face.
You're all still pretty high and mighty, aren't you? You all think this state needs a change. You don't like the way it's run. Well, who's going to run it? Willie Stark? The judge? You? You can be bought, too. As a matter of fact, you have been. And with my money. That's a waste of good liquor, boy. Your mother wouldn't approve.
Later, Jack says to Ann that their real life will be on the mainland, far from Burden's Landing. Ann's father was a former governor, and she wants Jack to be more ambitious and make more money. Jack then decides he is not ready to take Ann away, asking her to wait for him. Jack returns to work early from his vacation. The editor lets him know that Willie lost the local election. With the aid of Lucy, Willie studies hard and earns his law degree. He begins a career working for poor people. The lost election and the local corruption are never far from his mind. At the newly built school, the kids have a fire drill. The emergency stairs pull away from the cheap-made bricks. Several children are killed. At one of the burials, Willie is lionized for telling the truth about corruption.
Oh, Lord, I'm punished for voting against an honest man.
God bless you, Willie.
If we'd only listened to you, Willie.
We'll never forget you, Willie.
You were right, Willie.
Let me shake your hand.
Should have listened. Should have listened. Willie, you were right all the time.
Willie shows his first sign of weakness as he basks in the limelight. Willie begins to lead the fight against local corruption. Jack is sent to Canoma to report on Willie. A group of politicos working for a man running for governor are worried about the rural, or as they call them, the hick vote. They want another candidate to siphon off enough of the hick vote that their guy will win in a three-way race. Tiny says he has the man. Willie tells Jack that he is not interested in politics. A car comes down the dirt road blowing its horn. Tiny and another local commissioner come with some state-level politicians to recruit Willie as an unknown straw man to run for governor. Willie joins the race in earnest, but he is not dynamic enough for the non-local crowd. Jack follows as a reporter. Sadie Burke, Mercedes McCambridge, is assigned as his assistant, and Tiny stays as manager. Sadie is a tough, no-nonsense worker with a husky voice. She is as cynical about life as it is possible to be. One day, Jack talks to Sadie about Willie. Jack asks about Willie being set up as a fall guy. Sadie talks about how badly Willie will have it when he finds out.
Do you mind if I sit with you, Sadie?
Stand, sit.
Thanks. Tell me, what are you on this merry-go-round for?
I take notes.
For whom?
For those whom pay me.
Which is?
People?
Smart people.
Yeah, anybody that pays me is smart.
You don't have to be smart to frame a guy like Willie Stark.
No, brother, you don't.
Sadie is trying to sleep while Willie and Jack work on his speech. Jack helps Willie sharpen his speeches. Willie knows he's going to lose the race. Sadie comes in for a drink. Willie rambles on about what he would do for the state. Sadie lets it slip that Willie is being set up. She is hard on him for not getting anything for the fall.
That you've been framed, you poor sap.
Framed?
And how? Oh, you decoy. You wooden-head decoy. And you let him. You know what you are? Well, you're the goat. You are the sacrificial goat. You are a sap because you let him.
Sadie, that's enough.
Enough? He didn't even get anything out of it. They'd have paid you to take a rap like that. But they didn't have to pay a sap like you. Oh, no. You were so full of yourself and hot air, all you wanted was a chance to stand up on your hind legs and make a speech.
Sadie gives Willie a drink and chews on him. After a night of drinking with Sadie, Jack takes Willie to a speech at the fairground. Jack treats him with some hair of the hound.
Is he drunk?
Never touches the stuff. Lucy doesn't favor drinking.
How'd you get him here? He was out stiff.
Hair of the dog that bit him.
Here. He must have swallowed the dog.
Hungover, Willie makes the best speech of his life. He gets through to the Hicks. Sugar Boy is in the audience. Willie denounces Tiny from the stage. When Tiny's men try to usher him off the stage, Sugar Boy jumps on the stage with a gun to protect Willie. He never leaves his side again. Jack writes and Willie preaches to the Hicks. Sadie is surprised by what is taking place. When Willie surges in the polls, the state politicos send out goons to attack the campaign. Jack is stopped from reporting as the paper changes its policy. Jack quits, saying he's too rich to work. Sadie and Sugar Boy have formed a team around Willie, but Willie loses the election. Willie is drinking hard and says he now knows how to win. Jack drifts around for 4 years, constantly changing jobs. He feels his journey has taken him away from Anne and Burden's Landing. Willie is still making speeches and writing. Even Tiny joined Willie's team. Jack notices that Willie is making deals and spending vast amounts of money on his campaign. Jack goes to work for Willie. Sadie is working hard for the campaign. The plan is to have Jack do research for Willie. Special research. Jack returns to Burden's Landing with Willie. He thinks it's time for him and Anne to get married. Willie talks to all of the rich folks. Adam asks about Willie making deals with people that he is against. Willie offers to build a hospital for the poor people. Anne is starstruck by Willie. Judge Stanton makes a deal to support Willie in exchange for being Attorney General. Willie wins the election for governor. The Hick crowds pour into town to support their leader. Willie has Tom and Lucy on the stage, but he and Lucy are estranged. Jack is enjoying the work. Adam remains skeptical, and Anne has drunk the Kool-Aid. Willie gets to work building roads, dams, schools, and hospitals. But Willie was willing to use whatever he had to force people to his will. Jack kept the book on anything that could be used to blackmail people into doing Willie's bidding. By now, Tom was a football star at some school in Louisiana. One day, Jack comes into the governor's office. Sadie is mad because Willie has been running around with other women.
After all I've done for him. Now he goes two-timing.
He's been two-timing Lucy, so there's another kind of arithmetic for what he's doing to you.
Lucy!
Sadie says Willie is two-timing her, but Jack says Willie has been two-timing Lucy, hence there is another arithmetic for Sadie. Later, Jack gets a slap for his words. Willie comes and gets Jack and Sadie because Dolph Pillsbury, Will Wright, has been caught skimming money. Willie sends Jack to get Judge Stanton. Downstairs, Sadie is present while Anne talks to Willie. It is clear that they are now an item. Willie destroys Pillsbury and makes him sign an undated resignation. Judge Stanton disapproves of the way the man is being handled. Willie orders a man in the legislature to take care of the Pillsbury issue by blackmailing him about an upcoming mortgage. Jack tries to stand up to the judge and is rebuffed. The judge also resigns as Attorney General. Later, Sadie sees Willie and Anne together. Anne does feel some remorse about the affair. Sadie tells Willie that the judge gave the story to the press about Pillsbury. Willie's political foes move towards impeachment. However, through blackmail and violence, Willie's side suppresses the movement. Willie orders Jack to get some dirt on Judge Stanton. Jack insists that there is no dirt to be found. Jack returns to Burden's Landing to look for dirt on the judge. Jack starts his questioning with Anne. Adam has been selected to be the director of the new medical center. He doesn't want to take the job. Jack and Ann give him the hard sell. Ann gets really upset with her brother, but it could be more about her relationship with Willie. Jack starts researching at the county archive and slowly finds some dirt on Judge Stanton.
Will I find anything, Judge? Will I? I didn't find it all at once. It takes a long time to go through old courthouse records and musty deeds. A very long time. But it wasn't too hard for me. I was well trained in research, especially this kind.
After Jack gets the information, he holes up in his room, drinking and smoking. Finally, Sadie comes to find out why he is not working. Sadie looks at the picture of Ann and talks about how Ann's skin is smooth and hers is rough from smallpox.
Soft, white skin. Not like mine. I had smallpox when I was a kid. Where I lived, it seemed nearly all the kids had smallpox. Leaves your face hard. She's got poise. Look at the way she holds her head at just the right angle.
Sadie tells Jack that Willie plans on making Ann a governor's wife. Jack slaps Sadie this time. Willie goes to sit with the football coach and watch Tom practice. Tom is not doing well at practice. Jack lies and tells Willie that he didn't find any dirt on the judge. Willie says that he knows that Adam has turned down the job. Jack realizes this could only have come from Ann. Tom has been drinking and goofing off at practice. Willie gives him a lecture on playing by the rules. Ironic. Later, Tom and a girl speed down number 56 Willie Stark Highway. They are both drunk as coots, and the young lady encourages Tom to go faster.
Come on, Tommy, let's go faster. Come on.
Tom wrecks the car and the girl is badly injured. 2 state policemen cover up the booze at the accident because they recognize Tom as the governor's son. The girl's father, Richard Hale, using his own name, accused Tom of being drunk and causing his daughter's injury. Hale comes to the governor's mansion and accuses Tom of being drunk. Tom admits to being wrong and being drunk. Tom stands up to Willie and says he doesn't want him to fix the problem. Willie tries to bribe Hale with the state contract. Hale says he was a supporter and that Willie's words were good, but Willie is not. Hale's daughter dies and it hits the newspapers. Mr. Hale is missing, and Willie claims the man is in hiding. Tom is at the game, but the coach doesn't send him in. Willie's cops and goons rough up anyone that tries to talk to Willie about the Hale incident. In the locker room, Tom says he is dizzy and having headaches. Willie only wants him to get into the game to help shake off the scandal. Willie slaps his stepson before leaving. Tom goes into the game and does well, but he still has headaches. Finally, Tom takes a brutal hit and is out cold. Adam has to do the surgery in the hospital because all flights are grounded by fog and a specialist cannot make it in time. Adam says Tom may live, but he will be paralyzed. Willie is worried that Adam will not do an excellent job because of their history. Willie asks Jack what Adam knows about him and Ann's relationship. Jack says he doesn't know anything. Outside of the hospital, Ann is waiting to learn about the surgery and how Willie is doing. She follows Jack down the street, and at last, he asks why Ann had an affair with Willie. She begs Jack not to leave Willie. Jack gets mad and gives Ann the dirt on her uncle, Judge Stanton. Willie has convinced Adam to take the job as the head of the new hospital. Business goes on as usual, and Willie becomes more powerful and looks towards a national office. Willie begins a re-election campaign and heads to Canoma because he needs Lucy and Tom, who is now in a wheelchair, as props. Lucy is as cold as a well-digger's butt. They all hear on the radio that Hale's body has been found and that he was beaten to death. Willie's political enemies plan to impeach him. Willie wants Lucy and Tom to come to the Capitol as political props. Even Willie's dad is turning against him. Willie and crew speed back to the Capitol, but he has already been impeached by the time they get there. He will be tried in the state Senate. Willie wants the dirt on Judge Stanton. Willie makes speeches, organizes protests, and orders suppression of opposition. Willie and Jack go back to Burden's Landing. Jack talks to the judge alone. Willie and Sugar Boy come in and confirm that the judge is behind the impeachment. Willie tells the dirt that he has on the judge.
How did you find out?
Do you remember how you got the job? You know, Judge, dirt's a funny thing. Some of it rubs off on everybody. How did you get the job, Judge? Blackmail?
I swear I never even remembered his name.
Apparently, the judge sold out a client to get his first big job. Willie and crew head out as Ann and Adam come into the house. Jack realizes that Ann provided the dirt on the judge to Willie. They hear a gunshot and the judge has taken his own life. Jack does not go back with Willie. Adam accuses him of giving the information to Willie. Jack says he kept his word not to reveal the information. Adam now knows that Ann gave Willie the dirt. The Hicks pour into the Capitol to support Willie. Jack sees Ann crossing the street. She comes to his room. She breaks down and cries because Adam knows about her and Willie. Ann says that Willie is going back to Lucy. Jack calls her out for betraying the judge. Later, Jack goes out to find Adam before he does something rash. Jack goes to the Capitol and warns the cops about Adam. The trial is going on, but the crowd is having an effect. Willie is found not guilty. Willie comes out on the steps to speak to the crowd. Adam rushes in and shoots Willie. Sugar Boy blazes away and kills Adam. Jack and Ann go to Adam's body, while Sadie and Sugar Boy go to the governor. Jack is doing his best to console Ann. The dying Willie asks Jack to come join him. Jack asks Ann to wait, and she nods yes. Willie is rambling about what Willie Stark could be. He asks why, and then he dies. Conclusions. This movie is based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel by Robert Penn Warren titled All the King's Men, released in 1949. Jack is the focus of the book, while the movie tells more of Willie's story. It's an excellent read. In 2006, the film was remade as All the King's Men 2006. Sean Penn as Willie Stark and Jude Law as Jack Burden were excellent. I don't usually go for remakes, but this one is worth your time. A Lion in the Street, 1953, is based on a 1945 novel by Adria Locke Langley. The film tells the story of a similar rise to power and stars James Cagney, Anne Francis, and Lon Chaney Jr. This movie is also pretty good and worth the time to watch. Of course, these movies are based on Huey P. Long, 1883 to 1935. Long was nicknamed the Kingfish. He was governor of Louisiana from 1928 to 1932 and a U.S. Senator from 1932 until his death. After helping pass a bill designed to destroy the career of his political opponent, Judge Benjamin Pavey, Pavey's son-in-law, Carl Weiss, approached Long and fired a single shot. Weiss was gunned down by Long's bodyguards. There was a persistent rumor that Weiss was unarmed, and the firing of the guards killed Long. World-famous short summary: you dance with the devil don't change. This show is now completely free and independent and brought to you without ads. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and leave a review where you get your podcast. It really helps the show get found. As a technical note, references and citations are listed for each show on the site at classicmovierev.com. Beware the Moors. And also be careful when you drive over the Huey P. Long Bridge in New Orleans, because it's about a mile in the air.